I can see people piling in. For those of us who are just starting to join us, we're going to give you a few minutes for the room to fill in, but we're so very grateful that you're making time to learn about Associate Board Service tonight. We're so thrilled that we have this amazing panel of people who are already serving on associate boards or junior boards. I'm going to use those terms interchangeably tonight. We're so grateful that they're making time to talk about their experiences. They've all been rock stars on the boards that they're serving on, and they have like so much great advice to share. Hopefully it'll get everybody excited if you're not already serving on an associate board to join one. If you're already sitting on one, maybe you'll join 2 or 3. The nonprofit community really, really, really needs you at this moment between what's going on with social justice in our country right now, what's going on with COVID. There's never been a moment we've needed you more. And what you, the next generation, bring to the nonprofit community is so important. I know with our own junior board, which we call the Young Professionals Board at BoardAssist, they are always telling me things that I had no idea about, and bringing. We're going to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion on this call tonight because it is such an important topic in general in the world right now, and especially in the nonprofit community. That at its heart, BoardAssist was founded 20 years ago with the idea of addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the board space. The idea that everybody would have a seat at the table, and once you had a seat at the table, you would be included and have a voice. So we're definitely going to be talking about that tonight. But when people talk about diversity in the nonprofit board space, keep in mind it's all sorts of diversity, and one of the most important kinds of diversity that is generational. Don't discount how important that is, because every kind of diversity on a board is important, and boards are so much stronger with the more voices the more and different voices we have. And please know that generational diversity is super important as a form of diversity as well. The room is still filling in, but it's only 7 o'clock, so maybe I'll take a second. And as you guys are coming in, just so you know, if you have to leave early, we are making a recording of this evening, and within 48 hours, we'll have the recording up on YouTube as well as the BoardAssist website. As you know, the BoardAssist website is boardassist.org. We'll also be doing a blog summarizing what we discussed this evening. So if you don't have time to sit through the 90-minute video of this evening, you'll be able to just in 2 minutes read a summary. As people filing in, I'll introduce myself. I'm the executive director and founder of BoardAssist. We are a nonprofit ourselves. We're the leading personalized nonprofit board matching service in the country. And over the last 20 years, we've brought over $128 million into the nonprofit community. Our mission in general, it's very narrow. We focus on one thing, and we're very passionate about that one thing we do, which is find high impact New Yorkers like all of you for nonprofit boards. 99% of what we do is about finding people for full board service. And we also have this terrific program that we started a few years ago where we're grooming the next generation of leaders for board service. I find often when I'm talking to people under the age of 35, they're very surprised to know that we have lots of boards that would be very interested in having you serve in a full board capacity. You don't have to wait till you're 40 years old to serve on a nonprofit board. We were just talking a minute ago, if you joined late, about generational diversity on nonprofit boards. So often it's very, very important to have younger voices at the board table. And you should know, if you're interested in joining a board, we would love to work with you to find you a terrific board. And the boards that we're working with, for the most part, the financial commitment starts as low as $5,000 a year to serve in a full board capacity. So I don't discount when I say just $5,000 a year. I realize that that's not such an insignificant number, but a lot of people think, as I used to say a lot when I first founded BoardAssist, that you need to have a Roman numeral at the end of your name or a trust fund to serve on a nonprofit board. So that's just not true. And if you work at a lot of companies in New York have fabulous matching programs. I know Bloomberg is one that has a really great matching program, and there's quite a few where if you're joining a board that wants $5,000 a year, you might have to just put in $2,500 and they'll match the other half. And there are even companies in New York that have like 3-for-1 matching, where if you put in $1,250, you can do the math, they put in the $3,750 and you're at $5,000. So anybody who's interested in joining a nonprofit board, whatever your age, if you can hit that $5,000 a year threshold, we could definitely talk about a full board for you. And just reach out after Summit tonight to info@boardassist.org. And I'd love to work with you to help you find something terrific. As you all know, we are a nonprofit ourselves, and there is no fee for candidates to work with us to find a board. And I'm gonna pivot to getting started here because we have a lot of ground to cover. But before I do that, just more on joining a board in general. If you go on YouTube and type in the word BoardAssist, one word, we've got a bunch of videos up that talk about how to join a board, what to think about before joining a board. And of course, you'll see this wonderful summit up there as well. Or you can also go on our website. And I just want to thank our panelists again. I know how busy you all are. It's really nice that you took 90 minutes in what is probably the beginning of a long evening for you at work to find time to talk with others about a nonprofit board service. We really, really appreciate that. Because we do have so much information to cover, and because we have such a nice full panel, I'm not going to introduce each person because that would just take too much time to talk about all your accomplishments. But if you guys go on the boardassist.org website and you go to the press release page, you'll see information about all our terrific panelists who are here tonight. So with that in mind and all out of the way, let's get started. Let me just throw out to the panel in general. Anybody can jump in who wants to answer. In the last 12 months, what is the most impactful thing that your associate board has done for the nonprofit that you're involved with? Anybody want to talk about things you've done that have been particularly impactful for the nonprofit whose board you serve on?
Certainly, I'll jump in. One thing that comes to mind, so just to introduce myself, my name is Ryan. I'm an associate board member of this nonprofit called NAC, which is New Alternatives for Children. And one of the things that we did this year, fairly recent, was for each day, we sent out an email to everybody in our network advising on what we're fundraising money for. And each day was a different cause. In my nonprofit, we serve children that are underprivileged or have disabilities. So in this case, 5 days, each cause for 1 day. So there's 5 different causes, so to speak. And we set our bar at 40,000, which is how much we wanted to fundraise. That was our target goal. And we far exceeded that by around 30,000, give or take, right? Which is something that's very tremendous. And the money went back to the pockets of the people who directly need it, the families and the children who are underprivileged or are living in some of our underprivileged societies in the New York City area. So in regards to Cynthia's question, what is something tremendous that we did, really far exceeding our goal, which we did not even think we could do at this time, given that it is COVID and people are getting laid off. So it was just a tremendous effort and a huge accomplishment for our nonprofit. And just wanted to share that with the group.
Right, that is amazing. That's exactly the sort of thing that I think our audience wants to hear about because people want to understand that if you go on an associate board, you really can have that sort of impact. So I'm curious just to learn more about this effort. Was this something that the associate board drove this effort? They came up with this idea and then the associate board executed this?
Absolutely. So annually, what we do is we do a fundraiser for our organization, but this year we wanted to do it kind of differently and frame it differently as well. So in the past, we just kind of did one event and it was just one massive fundraiser. But this year, we really wanted to hit home to a lot of people and let our audience know where this money is going to, right? So we did tailor it this year to be kind of each day is a different cause. And when people actually know what they're fundraising for, where the money is going to, they're going to be a lot more lenient to donate in this cause. So this is something that was spearheaded by the associate board. We have full autonomy to fundraise in any way that we would have liked, and it was a huge success.
Because Ryan's going to kill me for doing this, but but I have to do this because that was just so extraordinary, the story that he like opened up with, because a lot of organizations are feeling like, oh my gosh, it's impossible to fundraise right now with COVID. It's not. People are being so generous right now. People understand. I'll tell you, BoardAssist had our biggest year ever last year. People really understand between COVID and the social justice movement that this is the time to hashtag be the change and start making a difference. So what I'm going to suggest, and Ryan's going to hate me for this, is you guys can find Ryan on LinkedIn. And I bet you that there are some associate board leaders who would love to see what that email looked like, because there's two parts to that equation. One, that they came up with this initiative and they executed it, which is tremendous. But then two, that is obviously a very well worded, magical email that I think a lot of us might want to see and use as a template, because you obviously, everybody is asking for money right now. You obviously did something really phenomenal with that wording. So people might want to reach out to Ryan and see what that email looked like. I for one, Ryan, definitely want to see that email. I think it sounds great.
Absolutely.
Who else had a big win with their board this year?
I can jump in as well, because I think our experiences were very similar to Ryan's. Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie. I'm actually based in Canada. I'm in Toronto, and I sit on the board for Sketch Toronto. It's a nonprofit that empowers homeless youth through the arts. Arts is very broadly defined: culinary, industrial, visual, musical, list goes on. We're actually in a unique position where we're purchasing our space. So we will not have any any lease payments. We're looking to convert that to a mortgage, which will help our expenses or reduce our expenses. Earlier on in my journey with Sketch Toronto, I proposed a plan to, similar to Ryan, create packages of what donations can actually address. So $500 donation provides music studio time for 2 individuals, or can help them record something. So we've created those types of packages, and we executed those in our capital campaign. Right now, we're looking to secure 1.5 million Canadian in donations to support the purchase of our property, and we're at just under $1 million in that. So I think it really does help to share a story of what does your money go to, what will it actually action, based on the dollars that you share with nonprofits.
Maggie, I think you raised such a great point, and this goes to a question I'm going to ask later if we have time, because we have so much to cover, and that is that one of the things that this next generation of board leaders sometimes discounts and doesn't value enough is that you have better communication skills for the 21st century than people my age, I'm 57, do. So we might not have thought, oh, this is how you get people to donate now. You need to explain like where that money is being spent. And so when you bring that 21st century communications skill set to your board, that's really, really, really valuable. It can often be a new way of thinking around communications that your organization hadn't thought of before. With that in mind, just pivoting off for a second, have any of you been involved in changing the way that your nonprofit communicates? Okay, so that's...
I'll maybe add a little bit on that. This strategy was brought forward 3 years ago, and so it did take some time to adopt with the right fundraising campaign. But it was really the team working on the ground level at the organization that made it happen. So I think part of that communication strategy, while we may have those ideas of what channels to leverage, what are some good strategies to actually execute on, we really need the partnership of people working at that nonprofit. They know their users the best, and they're the ones who can actually relay the appropriate message that signals what will donations drive from a value perspective.
Maggie, that's so helpful. So, funnily enough, the next question I had, which seems to work well with where we're going, is what about things that your organization, you guys at the associate board level have done to help your organization in ways other than with fundraising? Because I know within the BoardAssist family, our young professionals board is constantly counseling me on things other than fundraising that are very, very helpful. Things that are just intuitive to you all, but we may not know. For example, I didn't realize until very recently that Google now owns YouTube because of that. When people go to YouTube to view our videos, that helps us with our search ranking at Google. So I didn't understand that, and I needed our young professional board to explain that to me, which is why you'll see when you see the YouTube videos for BoardAssist, there aren't that many views on them because we had all the videos on our website. I wasn't driving people to YouTube. I seemed like inconvenient. Why not just drive them to the BoardAssist website? I didn't understand this bigger thinking. So with that in mind, any great ideas that you guys have had for the boards that you support other than in the fundraising space?
I think I can speak to this a little. So hi everyone, my name is Rucha. I'm currently the associate board chair for an organization called Grace Outreach, which is an organization that's based in the Bronx borough of New York, and it serves lower income women who haven't pursued higher education. So it's really two branches of the organization. There's one that's focused on their education. There's another one that's focused on their career. So potentially post-college or post-high school if they want to pursue careers. I'd say one great piece of this, and I know Janine and Sam are on this call and they're part of the same organization. And one of the great things I think that we've done separate from just raising funds, which is I'd say essentially what an associate board is asked to do, is work with the organization itself. So there are times where operationally, if they need help planning events, we have a hub of our associate board that does events and student programming. So we have separate events with the actual students of the organization. I know Sam, I don't want to blow your cover here, but Sam's actually hosted several events with the students on financial literacy. So that's awesome. I think anything that we can provide them that's like based on our skill set is great. And I know this is focused a little bit more on education, so it's pretty specific here, but I mean, to that extent, kind of answering your question, Cynthia, I think there's so many ways that organizations can work with their associate boards to do more than just raise money, or, have their names on an associate board just to say that they're involved. There's always help needed in the nonprofit space. So that's really all I had to add. But Janine or Sam, if you guys had anything else or if I missed anything, let me know.
Well, I was about to just shout out, sorry, I'm not sure if people can hear me, but Rucha and just Janine a little bit more, just because they for years have been doing things beyond those kind of events like mock interviews and other career speeches, both vocational, but also sort of emotional, helpful sessions. So those two have really done a tremendous amount.
Well, we are very, very happy to have 3 people from Grace Outreach with us, and I'm going to put a plug in for BoardAssist. We placed all 3 of them with the associate board of Grace Outreach. They had no associate board. BoardAssist started it. This is what we do. We find fantastic people like you guys for boards, and then it's just so great to see a year or 2 later how they're doing phenomenal jobs. A question about fundraising that we've discussed a lot in the nonprofit community this year, but at the full board level as well as the associate board level, is about creative online fundraising that you've done. So Ryan talked about just an email campaign. Have you all been involved with any sort of creative fundraising ideas, like a trivia night, a bingo night, like any sort of online fun things during COVID that have helped with fundraising?
Yeah, I can jump in. So quickly, I'm James, and I'm with Reach the World. It's an education nonprofit. So we bring the education or the benefits of travel into classrooms, K-12 classrooms. But really quick, I'll quickly kind of answer the projects one too. For our board, we also do like strategic projects. So we've done like research projects for like which schools to expand to, right? So like, researching like programs that this state offers and kind of what schools are the best fit, right? So kind of maybe for like consultants, right? A lot of consulting skills, but for that. So we have research kind of projects there too. But for us this year, we did like a virtual 5K fundraising. So we spread the word mostly through Instagram and social media. We just had people kind of, it was pretty easy, right? Kind of just run a 5K and kind of send it to us. But it was interesting and kind of previous question, like how do we kind of expand into new channels, right? Because previously all our fundraising was in person, but this year, of course, had to be virtual. So of course, social media, but we also did like Venmo, right? So we like did Venmo requests. We pretty much just kind of Venmo'd our friends and had them kind of Venmo the money. And that was the way we kind of collected the donations. So we just kind of expanded our reach in different ways, definitely leveraging social media for that. So that's what we did.
So James, that first of all, just a call out to James. James is the glue that holds the BoardAssist Junior Board together, the YPB. Among the many things that James does for BoardAssist, because he sits on several boards, he's on our YPB as well as Reach the World, where we placed him. James does a phenomenal newsletter for our YPB 4 times a year. And I say this now when to call out James because we're so grateful for the newsletter. Everybody from the BoardAssist team who's on the call will tell you it's great. It's funny. It brings us all together, and we're so grateful for it. But I also, this summit's about best practices, and I would urge you all, if you don't already have a newsletter for your associate board, to create one. It does such a phenomenal job of building community within our associate board or YPB. Everybody really enjoys getting it. James does a particularly good job with it. Like everyone really looks forward to seeing it, and it's great. But it's just such a phenomenal team building instrument for us. And I'm going to do what I did to Ryan to poor James. You can find James on the BoardAssist website, so you'll know how to reach him. And maybe he'll send you a copy of what our last newsletter looks like if you're interested to use as a template, because you're going to have a really hard time finding a better template than what James has done for us. And it's really, I think it's such a best practice in the associate board space to have one of these newsletters. And I don't know of any other junior boards that have them. I think we're like, it's unusual, and it really should become a norm because it's such a great team building thing. So with that out of the way, turning now to Reach the World, can you tell us more about how the virtual 5K worked, like a little bit of the mechanics of it? Because I think we'd all like to know more. That sounds like it was very effective. How did you charge? How did it work exactly?
Sure. So first, I think I'll start with getting the word out. And of course, we asked all our board members to, post things. But what we found really helpful was, we had a committee running it, right? So the committee kind of made template posts. So it just made it very easy for all of our board members to post onto their social media. So that's how we thought about it. Just whatever this committee that's running it, whatever they can do to make it as easy as possible for everyone else to chip in was how we thought about it. But so I think that was the main idea. But yeah, it was pretty simple. After we created those posts, and then we just and we scheduled it too, right? We kind of kept everyone updated. It's like, hey, here's a post we can do this week. It was like a month-long campaign or so, I think. So we kind of scheduled it. Here's what we can do this week, and here's all the posts. And then we just kind of scheduled it out and just kind of made sure everyone made those posts. And we had like, I think, a separate website for people to go to. There's just so many different ways to donate, right? There was the website, as I mentioned, with the Venmo, or I think there's a Facebook link too. So whatever was like most appropriate, most easy, people can go to.
And James, was it sort of like people, donors sponsored you, like you committed to run a 5K, and if you finished it, then the donor gave money, or did they like pay like 10 cents, a mile, or how did it work in terms of money?
Yeah. Actually, we just did it. It was like, it was a $10 or $20 entry fee, right? And then you just kind of So you pay that to like enter into the race, right? And then you kind of sent us like a picture of your time or you running, and we had prizes like whoever, you know, did the fastest or cool scenery, stuff like that. We had like we gave everyone a virtual bib that people can print out. So it was like, you know, here's your bib and here's where you ran. And what was cool this year, right? But usually, so we're in New York, so usually our fundraising is our New York community, but this year we were able to reach out to like, you know, around the world or like California, wherever, right? So we got people with like Golden Gate Bridge in the background, things like that. So it was definitely cool to, you know, broaden that reach this year.
Cody was obviously there. He's at the Golden Gate Bridge right now.
Yeah.
All right, well, James, for those of you who are watching right now, I'm gonna get a lot more detail from James about this and write this up in a blog, because I just think this is like everyone, you know, unfortunately we are on lockdown for ways longer still. Everyone's looking for fun ways to fundraise. And I think it's extraordinary that Ryan did so well with just an email campaign. But I think, you know, for mere mortals who can't accomplish what his team did, I think if you can have a fun element with it too, that's great. Did anybody else do anything creative and fun with fundraising in this virtual world we now live in? So pivoting a little bit from that question, how about how you all socialized as associate boards this year? Did you guys get on Zoom and do Zoom cocktails? Did anyone do like a wine tasting, a taco night, a Trivial Pursuit? Did anybody do any kind of creative socializing this year?
Happy to jump in here. I think, so I'm part of the BoardAssist Associate Board, joined at the start of last year, right when quarantine was hitting. And I think what we did a really good job on was welcoming everybody. So like the first day that I accepted the position and joined, I got a Zoom invite, and it was with our one of our other members, Daniel, who welcomed me in. It was a small format, like him and I and one other member. We got to get to know each other a bit, joke around a bit, and then that was like the toes in the water before we dove into a full board meeting. And I thought that was a really cool way to build some familiarity and have like one really familiar face. And I'd obviously talked to Cynthia beforehand, and we knew each other, but I thought that was pretty interesting. At least build some easy rapport, where in the large group format it's hard to speak up, and especially as the new guy, you don't really want to talk out, and that was a good way to start that process.
As I recall, you put Mitch to work immediately, because none of us at the board level could really figure out how Zoom worked. And I remember Mitch very nicely participated as a mock participant, so we could try out doing Zoom and seeing if we knew what we were doing.
Yeah, that's right.
He was working hard, rolling up his sleeves. And just keep in mind that when we had the full board summit in September, we talked about, when the first questions was what's a great board member look like? And everybody went around really quickly and basically said the same thing, which is a great board member is somebody who just rolls up their sleeve and does whatever they need to do. And it's the same thing at the associate board level. So here was Mitch. He had just joined us, and he raised his hand and said, "Sure, I'll be on the practice Zoom call, so all you people who are over the age of 50 can figure out how Zoom works." So sometimes that can be very, very valuable. One thing that has been good about Zoom in the pandemic has been that with the onboarding process, when somebody new comes on, in the old days, it might take a month to, get that new member in front of some of the seasoned members to welcome them. But now we can do things much more quickly with Zoom. So, that has been something that's been going on. So I'll pivot now to just talking about onboarding. What techniques have you all used to that have been successful in the onboarding process? Shiv, we haven't heard from you, so I'll put you on the spot. Anything in particular your organization does well with onboarding?
Yeah. Sure, yeah, I can talk about that. So Just for background, I'm Shiv. I used to be on the Project Explorer board, actually with Richa, who's on the call as well. I moved, so I ended up not being on the Project Explorer board anymore, and I'm no longer part of it because it's sort of on pause for COVID. So my onboarding is from a few years ago, so it was pre-social distancing, like before I think any of us knew what that term meant. But in terms of onboarding, I would say the most helpful thing when I joined the board was just to do, I met in person with the founder and sort of the leader of the business, whose name was Jenny. So we had coffee, and then I think from there, it's mostly goes back to your previous question, which is how to socialize and meet the other members of the board. So the way the board was structured is there were several committees. So I had a social event where I got to meet different people and chat with them about what their roles were. And then from there could do sort of one-off calls where I would talk in greater detail with the people on the committees, and then I could decide where I wanted to focus my efforts and which committee I kind of wanted to join. So I would say in terms of onboarding, the most important thing I think is just getting the new board members in the room with the other ones, because just by its nature, people who are joining these boards, they want to help. So just putting them in contact with other people, they can see who they connect with, and then take it from there.
That's super helpful. Ari, we haven't heard much from you, so I gotta, after promising I wouldn't put people on the spot, Ari is, anything with the onboarding that worked particularly well or not so well with the board you're involved with?
Yeah, perfect. So hi, everyone. My name's Ari, and I'm actually on the board of Akeem USA, which is a sister nonprofit to Akeem Israel. So what the nonprofit aims to do is provide support programs, services, and advocacy for those with developmental and intellectual disabilities across both Israel and the US, actually. And I think my experience is slightly different because it's not actually just an associate board, it's a full board, but I kind of help bring that diversity of being a junior member on the general board. And one of the things that we always aim to do is we aim to have a social event where we bring in a speaker. The speaker is usually someone that's part of the organization in Israel, a former member of the Israeli Defense Forces that also, has had an impact with the organization as well. And we usually have the social event, we have the speaker come in, and exactly like Shiv had said, it's really a chance to get all the new board members acquainted with the current board members, as well as any other people that are giving to the organization or helping with fundraising. So I think it's the same concept of putting people together. And I think in general, one of the biggest things in our jobs today and what we aim to do is constantly network. So as soon as you get two people in the room and they get talking and there's a common cause that unites both of them, after hearing someone, really elegantly put what the nonprofit does, what the mission is, if you can have people bonding over the causes of what you guys are working towards, I think that's a great start to building a relationship, not only for the board members, but with others looking to join.
All right, I think that's so helpful because the feedback that I keep getting, especially from our millennial board candidates, is that you all are zoomed out. And so I particularly appreciate that everybody made time to be on Zoom tonight. And that when you have an onboarding event or a social event that just people coming together without a programming piece now, people just don't want to do that at this point in the pandemic. It's got to have something besides just people coming together on Zoom. So I think that's a really creative idea to have a speaker as part of that social event within your organization or that onboarding event. And that's something really easy for most nonprofits to set up. But this goes back to the point that I was making earlier about you all having really creative ideas that the organization may not have thought of. So I think that's a great idea. Brandon, how do they onboard people in Chicago?
I'm the same way. So I think, by way of introduction, Brandon, I serve in Urban Initiatives, which focuses on the power of sport and academics to get inner city youth to excel. But when I join and when other folks have joined recently, we do Zooms, but breakout rooms. So we have a large meeting, and whenever we have a new member join, or it's typically a senior board member and 2 or 3 other of our peers, and just ask them very informal questions, get them, comfortable with us. And then pre-pandemic, it was always informal chat after one of our meetings, go to a local bar or a local pub or whatever it may be, and just always have someone around the new person that just joined, especially if they didn't know anyone else there. And I thought that functioned so well because immediately made a connection. It made you trust the other board members. And typically, you know, when someone talks to you and you're the newbie, you leave having a positive experience. So that's something that worked well for us, and I think continues to do well via Zoom breakout sessions.
That's a great idea to break it into smaller pieces. Do any of you sit on associate boards where you're formally assigned a board buddy when you come on, that there's like an assigned board mentor that you have? Okay, that's interesting because that happens a lot in the full board space. So that's, you've seen less of that, I guess, in the associate board space, that you're assigned a mentor to sort of help you get online.
I can step in there a little bit. I
Yes.
also sit on a full board, but we do have junior members. I'm one of them, but we also recruit from girls on board. So it's all about getting younger women introduced into the nonprofit space through board membership participation. And those colleagues will usually have a mentor assigned. So they'll work more on like projects that they can get more involved in based on their experiences work-wise. And they have someone who also has similar experiences to help guide them through those initiatives.
That is great. I'm going to take a 10-second housekeeping timeout to just say to those who came on late, if you have to leave early or you came on late, within 48 hours, we will be posting the full recording of this evening. So don't worry if you have to go. You know, we so appreciate that you are making time for us. Also, if you would like to communicate with us at any point during the webinar, you can use the Q&A feature that's at the bottom of your screen. Everybody knows where that is at this point in the pandemic, but it is the bottom of your screen, sort of in the middle. And just, you know, we welcome questions, and you know, keep them coming, and we'll answer them as soon as we see them. So when you all have, you know, one of the big problems I hear about in the associate board space is retaining the terrific people that you find. So, you know, people come on board, they really, really want to be part of the team, but then they get really busy with work and they realize they just can't do it, or, you know, maybe they transfer cities or whatever. When you lose people, why do you lose people? And is there any advice you have for other associate boards on board retention? Because this is a huge problem in the associate board space.
I'll chime in. I think one of the reasons why we lose people is due to changing circumstances, such as if you're going to B school or if you have a job relocation, which just brings you to another city. Various reasons we might lose people. But I think one of the key factors in terms of retaining people is giving them responsibility and helping them feel engaged. I've seen it far too often where people just join the board and they're happy to be on it, but they don't really contribute. And then over time they lose interest. And I think it's in anything in life, if you have responsibility and you develop that passion, you know, you're going to keep staying engaged with the organization. So in my board, I work as the networking chair. So what I do for the people who are in the networking committee is I give everybody a specific task, something that they can own and have autonomy over. And then through that, I think that the passion is going to continue, and you know, you'll see that collaboration come through. So I think for retention, just giving people a purpose is something that's very helpful.
I should just add that Ryan has just been named co-chair of BoardAssist Networking Committee. So I didn't even know that he was doing that. So that was a really great choice. So you're going to do a great job in that. So that worked out well. What have the rest of you done to try and help with board members leaving, board retention?
Cynthia, I can jump in here. Oh,
go ahead.
Okay, I'll go and then you can go. Hi, everyone. I'm Christianne. I'm currently a student at Northwestern Kellogg School of Management. I'm also on the BoardAssist YPB board, the associate board. I think the associate board has done a great job with retaining talent. Each quarter, somebody on one of the committees sends out a survey to gauge how we're all feeling, if we need anything. And I think those surveys are really amazing, and they only take 5 minutes to complete to just gauge how everyone is doing on the board. Also, every year I'll send out a survey to just gauge how everyone is doing with the partnerships with different companies and different schools. And from there, I can see how those different partnerships are going and if they need anything from me or from Cynthia. So I think those are doing quarterly checkups, or even, you know, bi-quarterly checkups are an awesome way to stay engaged with your board.
I was so dying to go to Molly, but I just, if you don't mind, I just following up on what Christianne said. And it was funny because I had been looking at the two of you thinking you were the next two I wanted to call on, so you read my mind. I think what Christianne does for BoardAssist is so incredibly valuable. She is always thinking so incredibly creatively, and she adds value in two big ways. One, she adds value with like these amazing ideas that she comes up with, which she always executes on and always gets done. She doesn't just come up with an idea and pass it off to somebody else to execute. She gets it done herself, and she always delivers. But an almost as important value that she adds, and this goes back to the value of the newsletter that we were discussing 15 minutes ago, is when Christianne does something amazing, James has it in that next newsletter. And so if you're a member of RYPB, you see this and it lights a fire under you because you're like, wow, you know, I could do something like that. I have some ideas. And so it goes viral. It's so important. What it does, how it just motivates everybody else. And, you know, the thing that I would encourage people on this Zoom to keep in mind is that a lot of the nonprofits you're involved with would love to have you doing more, but they don't really fully understand all the great things that you could do. And they don't know how to like pull out your talent. So they sort of need you to raise your hand and say, hey, have you ever thought about doing things this way versus that way? And I know how to do that for you, let me do it. But you have to create an environment within your associate board where people feel very comfortable raising their hand, knowing that creative ideas will be welcome. I mean, Christianne is always coming up with things I would never have thought of to do. And they're always great ideas. And there's not anything I would have asked her to do because I wouldn't have had that idea. So I think when you shine a light on the most creative members of your team, it just gets the entire rest of the team super excited to come up with some great ideas too. And that's, you know, just another great thing that James does for us with that newsletter. So Molly, I know you had something you wanted to share with us.
Yes, thank you. And apologies if it's a bit loud. My puppy has lost her patience with me on Zoom calls for the day. But I'm Molly Henning. I currently serve on the advisory board of an organization called the Resolution Project. So our organization, it's based in New York. We're focused on sort of developing and fostering youth leadership across the world. Actually, I think 80% of our work is actually international. And so we foster sort of student-led at the collegiate level social entrepreneurship. So I think, you know, this is the second advisory board I've served on. My first advisory board, I'm hesitant to say it, but it was a little bit more of a negative experience. I think because of some of the ideas around how do you motivate people to stay engaged? How do you motivate people to want to contribute? And we sort of touched off this conversation talking about fundraising. And I think when the contribution of the advisory board sort of starts and stops at fundraising, it can be a little bit difficult to feel like a real attachment to the organization. And so I think it's important for advisory board members and for those people who are leading the advisory board to, you know, really hold our own organizations and boards accountable to make sure that the advisory board feels engaged. And so, you know, when I think about motivation, I don't think it's that different than in a workplace setting where, you know, you want to make sure people kind of understand the impact of their contribution. So making sure that your advisory board has insight into what is our fundraising. If our role is fundraising, how is that impacting the organization? What is that going to? And so I think the transparency is really important. I think also accountability. So someone touched on roles and making sure people have sort of clear ideas of how they can contribute. I think that's really important. And then ultimately, like, especially in a workplace setting, like the people who are engaging in advisory boards, we're typically driven. We may be overachievers. Like, we're there because we want to be. We want to be engaged. We want this to be part of our sort of career impact long term. And so creating sort of those paths to development, either within the organization to a more senior board position, on the full board of the organization, or even like an officer position in the advisory board. I think just having like all of those sort of factors of motivation kind of central is really important.
Well, that's such a great point. I'm so glad you raised that, because I think you're right. I think a lot of people join associate boards because they do want to be mentored by the senior people at the organization, as well as senior people on the full board. Do any of you sit on boards where you have some sort of a mentorship relationship with a full board member? That's something that the nonprofit community talks about a lot, but I think that they have not really accomplished that yet. And it kind of reminds me of what Ari was saying about bringing in speakers. Like, that might be a way of doing it. It could even be that the speaker is a board member speaking to the junior board about like career paths in that space that they're in. Maggie, you look like you were about to say something.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I used to sit on an associate board for a hospital, and we had access to the full-time board, and it was great. Really high profile people who had so much knowledge to share with us from a nonprofit perspective, but also overall career perspective. And so we had a series of curated events where through morning chats, we could connect with them over breakfast. And then also we got to do hospital tours with them of some of the innovative things that were being built, like MRI machines and the like. So those moments were definitely extremely motivating and engaging.
Just to piggyback off of what Maggie said, in the organization that I serve on, we have something where we give our junior members the opportunity to serve on a subcommittee from the full board. So our subcommittee has a series of meetings throughout the year for each specific goal, right? So like the real estate committee and so on and so forth. So we have 2 people from our associate board that would be assigned to each committee, and they would just participate in those throughout the year, which is really awesome because it incentivizes people to stay engaged, right? And learn from the full board as well. Something that we also do is we have a 1-year rotation, and this is something we're starting right now, where we will give somebody the opportunity for 365 days to serve on the full board as a junior board member. And then after the year is up, then we would just kind of rotate somebody in that same role. So it just gives people the opportunity to get visibility into the full board, understand the inner workings, and not just get bogged down on the fundraising portion of what the junior board does, right? So.
Yeah,
I think that, James, go ahead.
Jump in really quick too and say we send like a junior board member to like the full board's quarterly meetings. So we'll have we'll send a rep every quarter, and they'll report back. So that's another way to engage someone. And then quickly, kind of with engagement, unfortunately, it couldn't get kicked off too much this year because it's in person. But right, it's about refreshing kind of your board's interest into the mission, right? So what we wanted to do this year more was send our board members into like classrooms that we work with, right, and have them be engaged there. So just finding ways to kind of engage with the mission of the board as well, refreshing that.
James, I think that's such an important point for full board members and also associate board members, that just keep coming back to making sure the people on your boards really connect with and understand your mission, and understand why what they're doing is important. Richa, I feel like we haven't heard from you much this evening. Do you want to jump in, or do you want to save your voice for later in the evening?
No, I'm happy to jump in. I would agree with everything everyone has said, kind of piggybacking off of what Molly said. And just for context, I was on the board of Project Explorer from 2017 to 2019. And the reason I had joined was to learn a little bit more about the education space and how boards work. So I think, and I share the sentiment with a lot of people joining associate boards, is we don't really want to be there for the fundraising piece. For me, like I wanted to learn about how the board works. I wanted to help utilize the skill sets I had being like nearly out of school. Like how can I help them build brand awareness? How can I help them build corporate partnerships with, all of us had been working at really great firms in New York. How can we leverage our networks and contribute to the nonprofits aside from fundraising?
But I think that that's such an important point at the associate board level and the full board level. Nobody wants to just feel like all they're doing is writing checks or asking people to write checks. In the nonprofit community, we always need money, but I founded BoardAssist 20 years ago with the idea that you should never have that be the primary role of your board service, whatever level you're at. Nobody wants to feel like that's their primary role. So it's really important to make sure that everybody has an ability to participate beyond that. Alena, we'd love to hear from you now, or you could save your voice for later. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I keep like moving my mouse to hit unmute and then someone jumps in before me. So I mean, that just speaks to how awesome all the other panelists are. So my name's Alena. I am a junior board member of Advocates for Children of New York, which is this amazing organization that basically works to ensure that there are no barriers to students so that they can have a high quality education. And it focuses mostly on low-income students, but it's for all students in New York. And the work that they do is truly amazing. I will caveat, as a lawyer, I would feel remiss if I didn't mention that, I'm not speaking on their behalf. I'm only speaking on my behalf at being here. But that said, one really amazing thing that I think that AFC does to make sure that all of its junior board members stay engaged is that multiple people from AFC join in our quarterly meetings. And so they spend, 15, 20 minutes just talking about all of the amazing things that AFC has done over the past quarter. And so during our last meeting, last fall, Edgar, the director of development at AFC, came in and talked about, the fact that they've helped over 1,000 families throughout the pandemic to make sure that, families are getting the resources that they need to make sure that their students are able to do distance learning effectively. And so hearing that, it's really hard not to want to be engaged. And it's really hard not to want to raise money when you're like, wow, this is really actually doing something that's really important. And so I think that having someone from AFC come and share, both what they're doing and how what we do helps them is just a really great way to stay engaged. I think also what AFC does, and maybe I'm biased because I'm the membership chair, but I think that's something that we try to do in going through the interview process is making sure that people are really interested in what AFC's mission is, because there are so many amazing organizations in New York and around the world, but in New York, there are so many and there's so many amazing causes, but we want to make sure that someone who's joining AFC's junior board is someone who's really passionate about education specifically, because we think that that'll make sure that they're more likely to continue to stay engaged because it's something that they're already passionate about. And another thing that we look for is we want to make sure that people, while many people might want to be involved, we want to make sure that people actually have the time to be involved, because I think often people, especially like right out of college or right out of graduate school, are really eager to help, but they maybe aren't able to recognize just how much their job and maybe they just moved to New York, so adjusting to New York, adjusting to a new job really takes. So we like to make sure that people are a little bit more established, and so that they really feel like we actually feel and they actually feel like they can really commit time to being an active member of the organization. And I think that really helps people stay committed.
And I love what you said, that you said a lot of great things, but and I have to say I have a personal connection to Alena's nonprofit. The founder was a good friend of mine, And I loved her dearly. We sadly lost her to cancer at a very early age. And what she's done, Advocates for Children, it's an amazing nonprofit. Check it out. It does incredible work. But what Alena said that I really had not heard anybody say, not just tonight, but just in general, is we talk about in the associate board space a lot, an associate board member having a seat at the big board table, and maybe it's somebody that rotates once a year, as we talked about, and all these different things. But what we don't talk that much about, and I'm so glad Alena brought up, is the corollary, which is sending people from the full board to the associate board meetings. You never hear about that going on. You hear the opposite, that some lucky member of the associate board got to go to the big board meeting, not the other way around. And so, Alena, that's so interesting. That's such a great practice to share. It's something that I can assure you full board members are really happy to engage with the associate board and do that. It never occurred to them. And this is what we mean about when Christianne comes up with these creative, great ideas for me. It just didn't even occur to us to do this. I think that's a great idea to have that corollary. All right, just looking, there's just so many questions to ask. All right, social media and communications efforts. Anything in particular that you all have taught your full boards about, like tangible things you have been doing differently as a result of the associate board?
Hi, I'm Janine. I don't think I've spoken yet. So
oh gosh, Janine, we talked in the yeah, before we went live. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. No worries. So for the board that I'm on, which is Grace Outreach, so just as Rucha and Sam, I'm actually one of the former chairs for the board, and now I'm just sitting on the board and part of one of the committees on the board at the moment. But when it comes to communication, what I've found to be useful, especially when it comes to promoting our fundraisers and just getting the word out to our networks, is actually through text. So a lot of time, and personal text. So the way in which, everyone's phone is different, but even if it's set up as a group text, it's sent out individually to someone, usually I think has been very helpful. And it almost serves as a reminder, like, oh, I sent you guys an email yesterday about this fundraiser, just wanted to follow up to see if you'd be able to donate, take a look at the video that I shared. And that oftentimes really helps to get, action and to get individuals involved. But again, like Facebook, LinkedIn, those are also platforms that we encourage all the board members to utilize, especially as we look to recruit new members as well as fundraising.
Janine, so Janine was one of the founding board members of Grace's associate board, and they've been incredibly successful. The organization, we've built 99% of the full board, and I was just connecting with them today. They love their associate board. They're so thrilled with what they've accomplished and how effective they are. And that is, very much in large part to Janine being, right there on the frontier, starting the whole thing. So I know that that's important. So with that in mind, because I know they love you all so much, what are you doing for them that they're so excited about? Because they are very excited about what you guys are accomplishing.
Yeah, well, honestly, we have Rucha and Sam on this call here, and they've definitely, Rucha and I think Sam have joined probably a year now on the board. And I want to say over the past year, we've increased the board exponentially. That being said, a lot of the ideas that have been brought to the table. So at first, probably 2-3 years ago, at first it was only 4 or 5 of us. Now we're over 15 board members. And with that, the different ideas that come to the table, I think is really what keeps everyone engaged and everyone truly excited to to be a part of the board. Sam had mentioned, like, with our nonprofit, where we tend to be a little bit more engaged with the Women of Grace Outreach. And we almost, though we're not mentors to them, but just with the different events and engagement that we have with them, we almost come across as mentors. We're an idea that they never probably thought about at one point, but with meeting us and speaking with us, it really gives them some drive. And that being said, that also excites us as board members, knowing that we are doing our part and we are, contributing in a way that is making a difference. So I would definitely say, it's a collective effort from all of the board members here, but it's what we love to do. So I would.
Well, and I know that they appreciate you enormously for everything that you're doing. So for those who came on a little late, as you know, BoardAssist is a nonprofit. We are the leading personalized nonprofit board matching service in the country. And fundamentally, at our core is diversity, equity, and inclusion. The idea that everybody who wants to serve would have a seat at the board table and be included and have a voice. And so this has been a very big year for BoardAssist 2020 because the rest of the country seems to have caught up with us and is focused on DEI, which is such a core part of who we are. So with that in mind, have any of you at the associate board level been able to influence diversity, equity, and inclusion at the organizations with whom you're involved with? I mean, it's somewhat hard at the associate board level to accomplish that, but I'm just, if any of you have been able to have an impact on DEI with the larger organization that you work with, that'd be great. It's possible that's just not something that any of you have been able to be involved with this year. Okay, so then going to the next question, and I'd love to go around, and by the way, before I go to the next question, is there anyone I haven't called on so far? Okay, good. So let's go around, and I'd love to hear from everyone to answer this question because it is such an important question and it really matters so much to the people who are watching this evening. The people who are watching this evening, many of them already sit on associate boards, and we need them to join a second or third one because the nonprofit community needs them. And then a lot of people who are on tonight aren't on an associate board already, and they're sort of thinking, oh gosh, I know what it means to sit on an associate board. All you do is write a check. You don't really do anything. What's in it for me? I'm not gonna really enjoy it. I won't have an impact. So if we just go around and everybody, starting with Brandon, can talk about something that you've gotten out of your associate board experience, either like a new skill or networking, or how has serving on an associate board been beneficial for you?
Sure. I think given we work so closely with inner city youth, typically underprivileged, I think the most that I got out of is that there's nothing quite like direct impact, direct contact, whether it be through Zoom or phone call. It's whether it's a 15-minute phone call or pre-pandemic, you're playing 30 minutes with them, some kind of sport, just hearing them laugh. Give them tips. Typically they're 14 or younger, so an age I wish I could return to. And it's just that personal fulfillment, and to a sense, if you could help them a bit with their homework, or they could vent out to you about personal issues going on at home, whatever it may be, it's just super rewarding, and that's something that's invaluable. And you can't quantify it with money or time. It's just having an impact in someone is just amazing. And apart from that, the friends you meet, the networking you mentioned, colleagues, potential future employers, or potential future connections that will hook you up with your next job, whatever it may be, it's just the personal interaction is what matters the most to me, and obviously the direct impact on who the mission's for. That's the most impactful.
So Brandon, you brought up a great point that is very much a best practice that more nonprofits should be following, certainly at the associate board level. And that is making sure not only that the associate board members understand what your programming is about, but giving you an opportunity to connect with the consumers that you serve when possible. Some organizations that's more possible than others, but I think many boards can work more towards that. Christianne, how have you benefited and enjoyed board service?
Yeah, I've really loved my time on BoardAssist, and I've had an awesome time working with Cynthia and everybody else across the board. I will say that 2 skills that I've learned are definitely communication skills. So whether that's presenting during BoardAssist meetings or presenting on committee meetings and communicating with my committee on a quarterly basis. Also teamwork and team management skills. You have to be able to come to collective decisions that are best for the board and the organization as a whole. And I found that, those are the 2 skills that I've really been able to flesh out while I've been on the board, and I've really enjoyed that. I will just try to pivot back to your DE&I question from earlier, because as I sat and thought about it, I kind of wanted to say something. I have been, when I was at BlackRock before I came to Kellogg, I tried to partner with our BPN organization, so the Black Professionals Network at BlackRock, and also the SOMOS organization, which was the Latinx organization at BlackRock. And so through those organizations, we were able to match a few people on boards, because I realized that there wasn't a lot of Black and Latinx representation in the nonprofit board space. So I made that my mission while I was there, to try to connect with those groups in order to improve that. And I'm also a part of a group right now called MLT, and hoping to build a partnership with MLT, which is a professional organization for Black, Latinx, and Native Americans across the country. So I'm hoping to improve our partnership with BoardAssist in that way, and continue all of our DE&I efforts.
So I can't imagine that Christianne needed any assistance getting better at presenting, because as you can see, she presents beautifully. I will brag a little bit about BoardAssist, because DEI is such a core part of our mission. Typically, each year, the people that we place that add diversity to the boards they join is 3 times the national norm. So we're very proud of that. And how do we get that done? We get that done because we have Christianne. Christianne is basically partnering with tons of groups at Wharton and Penn and BlackRock, and all over the place, to bring us phenomenal people who are going to bring different voices to the table. I think that nonprofits need to do a better job deputizing their next generation, their associate board, to help them on DEI, because the associate board is a great place to help an organization on that front. And we're very grateful for all Christianne does for us on that front. So thank you. Mitch, how about you? What have you gotten out of board service?
Yeah, apart from intrinsically feeling good about yourself, there are some practical benefits. I've had a lot of people both above me and below me in my organization see that I've been involved and want to talk about the nonprofits that they're involved with. And that's a really quick way to connect with somebody. And that's been really cool, even from different organizations. I've had some reach outs that way. And then, the committee that I serve on at BoardAssist does the best practices. So we connect with other nonprofits in New York and try to collate and get a list of best practices. And that's been a really great way to meet people too, and get, quickly more involved in the nonprofit community. It's really cool just finding people with similar professional and educational backgrounds that have similar interests as you. I don't think it's very easy to do that. So this makes it a little bit easier.
So I would just say, if you are enjoying the webinar, you can thank Mitch and Ryan. They are part of the team that brought you the webinar. If you hate it, it's all my fault. But anything good, it's Mitch and Ryan. And we're so grateful to Mitch for that. As Mitch was talking, it also made me think of the point that this is one of the great things about associate board service, is often you get to do something earlier in your career than you would get to with your day job. A lot of you have very big jobs at very big companies, and so you might not get a chance to present in front of a board of directors for your company as somebody who's 4 years out of college, but you can do that in the nonprofit board space. And that's a really great thing in terms of how it gives you an opportunity to do things that you wouldn't get to do so early in your career otherwise. Shiv, what
Also,
would you
shout out to
add?
James for helping plan this too.
Oh my gosh, James, I'm so sorry. And I was looking right at you as I said that too. I'm so focused on James in that newsletter. James, my apologies. I'm so sorry. Yes. As you can see, we are very blessed at BoardAssist to have an amazing and professionals board, and they're also engaged and do so much for us. James, forgive me. Shiv, what would you add in terms of what you've enjoyed about board service?
Yeah, for sure. I would actually echo what Mitch said, and then I'll add something on top of it. So I think for me, it was really helpful to meet other people who are in similar careers who wanted to achieve similar goals. I won't reiterate too much of what Mitch said, but I think on top of that, it was really helpful for me to see other people who had similar skill sets from their professional careers and seeing how they would apply that to a different setting. So it's easier to see how valuable or how helpful you can be if you see other people taking a similar set of skills and applying it in the space that you don't necessarily have experience in. And it's just easier to see how you can add value in that way. So I'd say on top of the networking, it was actually helpful to see how you can actually target your skill set to be as helpful as possible.
That's a great answer. And
Yeah,
James.
I was gonna.
Oh, Cody, go ahead.
If you don't mind. But by the way, I'm Cody. I sit on both the YPB board, and then I also sit on the junior board at Renaissance Youth Center, which is a youth center based in the Bronx. But I actually had a similar reaction, I think, in terms of my takeaways sitting on the board. So I work at JP Morgan, and I work with a bunch of people that we all cover real estate clients. And so I was actually put in a situation at Renaissance Youth Center where there was a dispute between the nonprofit and the landlord. And so I was actually able to kind of use some experience in my professional life and actually apply it to my nonprofit experience. So.
That's awesome. I mean, that's exactly the sort of thing that we want to hear about happening. And so Cody, that's great. One thing I would say to our audience is, many of you are new to New York. You went to school somewhere else. You're living in New York for the first time. You're looking to meet people. If you think about it, the people that you're going to meet through associate board service, by definition, these are the nice people in New York. These are the people who, even though they're working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they are making time for board service. So just socially, it's a nice way to meet like the nicest people in New York. So speaking of one of the nicest people in New York, James, you're up.
Thanks. Yeah, definitely echo what everyone said. So I'll just try to be additive here. And I think since we talked about the newsletter, I'll go with that a little bit. So I don't really consider myself a writer or anything. So it's just a good way to kind of test other skill sets and do something different, right? I actually kind of leverage that to do a fantasy football newsletter with my fantasy football league. So just ways to kind of expand to do different things as well as what everyone else said.
Okay, you all moved around on my screen, so now I'm a little confused, but I'll go with Rucha now. Rucha, how about you? What would you add?
Yeah, thanks. I'd say, I mean, really for me, and the reason why I decided I wanted to join an associate board was to disconnect from work and to understand like whatever I do at my job, yes, it's impactful in certain ways in the corporate world, but like how am I connecting myself to the community? And I think being on an associate board allows me to sort of realize that there is so much more to do in the world than just sit at my computer and answer emails. And I mean, I guess that's a little crass, but like, it's just in all honesty, it connects people back to like what really matters. And I think that's been something really important to me in the last few years. So I'd say just being able to disconnect and reimagine sort of what is important has been helpful.
That's such a good point. And somebody needed to say it because that is true. It is like such a release and everyone is so stressed out right now. And I find working in the nonprofit community in general, it's a chance to see the best side of everybody, and see all these people who are trying to make the world a better place. And it's really very heartening, especially at the times that we're living in right now. Ryan, what about you? What would you add to what's been great about board service?
I would say, well, two things that I learned. Number one is messaging is key to success. And I certainly learned that through some of our fundraising campaigns that, if you can send across a message that really resonates with people and they're able to internalize, then the success rate is just exponentially higher, right? So really take time to carefully think about the message and how it could be relatable to individuals. Second, I would say having the opportunity to work with really good, nice people, to your point, Cynthia, right? You're most people that are a part of nonprofit organizations, they just want to do well in society, right? And they have very intense jobs, but they just want to do something good. So being able to work with people in a nonprofit board, you learn a lot and they learn from you. A prime example is James right here. I reached out to him for a survey that he executed. I was like, where'd you get that from? And he was like, SurveyMonkey. So now I use it for my personal use, right? But that's what's awesome, is that it's not competitive. We're all here to help each other out, and we're all here to serve the same cause. And when that happens, you can learn a lot of things along the way.
That's so good to know, and I really think that means so much to so many people. Janine, how have you benefited from your time at Grace?
I would say definitely the opportunity to just inform my network, my friends, my family of just what a board, a professional board is, or a young professional board is. A lot of people have the notion that a board is a full board. You're having to dedicate a lot of time to service. You have to fundraise. Like they have a certain idea of what a board is, but to inform people more of what I've been able to do on a associate board, and explaining to them the true benefits, especially in being a part of Grace Outreach. Cynthia, I don't know if you remember, when I was looking for a board, I really wanted to be on a board that was a part of a community that I grew up in. So I grew up in the Bronx, and I wanted to make sure that I was part of an organization where I can, that was in that community and I was giving back. So, being able to be a part of a board where I'm directly impacting people within the community or women from that community means a lot. And being able to speak about that to a lot of people, I think has really been fulfilling for me. So that being said, I would say that's a huge benefit in itself, where, just being a part of a board and being able to tell and explain to people who are interested in being on a board, but not sure, what it entails, explaining to them what that is, and also being a part of a board that you feel, is really about the purpose or your purpose that you can align to.
So Janine, I think that was that's such a great point, and I never hear anyone saying that. And so it's so lovely that you did that. One of the things that you've enjoyed is being an influencer and making board service more accessible to other people who didn't understand what it's about and how easy it is to serve on a board, and that you could be that role model for board service. That's so great. So I'm so glad you shared that. Richa, what would you add?
Sure. So I joined a board because I was new to New York. I was traveling for work every week, probably spending 1 or 2 weekends. And I had, my school alumni network, as well as my work network. And I thought that joining a board would give me an outlet to meet other like-minded individuals while continuing to give back. So growing up in school, I was involved in the education space, doing volunteer work. So those were probably the 2 reasons why I joined a board. And I think one of the biggest things I took away was learning about the inner workings of a nonprofit and how it differs from for-profit companies. Like I left realizing how much time and effort is spent on fundraising and grant writing and how crucial that is to helping an organization execute on its goals and strategies, and how stressful that can be and how priorities can really shift from one week to the next.
I mean, that's so helpful to know. Alena, I don't think you've gone on this question yet, correct?
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to jump in. Not to just echo what everyone else said. So to add on, I will say that being a part of the AFC Junior Board gives me a way to be connected to something that I'm really interested and passionate about, even if I, don't do it in my day-to-day job. So I've been really interested and passionate about education for like nearly a decade, which makes me feel old, but nearly a decade. And so I love that being a part of AFC lets me be connected to education policy. And also then when I'm fundraising for AFC, I get to talk to people who, like this summer, I did a fundraiser. My birthday was in June, and it was an important time in our country to talk about, social and racial justice. And so I did a fundraiser on behalf of AFC because AFC does a lot of really important work in the racial justice space. And so it was really amazing to talk about AFC on social media and engage with people who either didn't know anything about AFC, and also just to see so many people step up, I found, and to donate was such a humbling experience, and something that while it was, awesome that I was able to raise money for the organization and they really appreciated it, I also felt like I got like the benefit of like getting to engage with other people and show them all the amazing work that AFC does. And in that fundraiser, I also encourage people to read up on AFC's resources. They have like tons of webinars you can watch. And also they, just put out policy research about important education related topics. And so I would talk to people about those as well. And I found that to just be such a really rewarding experience. And so I love that being a part of the AFC Junior Board gives me like an easy way to talk and engage with my friends and my community about things that I find to be really important.
Alena, that's such a great point, and we talk about this all the time when I'm giving talks on why you should join a board. This whole idea of it's a chance to connect with that side of you that's different than your day job. And I'm a recovering lawyer, as I think Alena remembers. And I find this is very common with lawyers. In college, you were in a rock band, or maybe you were in the Peace Corps for 2 years after college, but now you're working at Skadden. But you had this piece of you that really loves music or really cared about what you were doing in the Peace Corps. So this is your chance where you get to connect with that interest of yours. Maybe you were in a theater group when you were in high school and that meant a lot to you, but now you're a Goldman banker or you're a Greenhill or whatever it is. And so this is your chance now to connect with that passion, the guitar, the theater, the sports, and connect with that part of you that you don't get to connect with in your day job. So I'm so glad you brought that up. Molly, what would you add?
Thanks. I echo what everyone said. I would add two things. A few people have mentioned, the board gives you an opportunity to sort of take your skill set that you've learned in a professional environment and apply it to nonprofit. I actually think the board also provides you an opportunity to experiment with a new skill set. Like if there's something that you feel like is a gap in your current work, the board is a place where you can raise your hand, dive into that, and really accelerate your development, and then take it back to your organization to sort of apply in a professional setting. Kind of on that same topic, a lot of people have talked about the idea of joining a board for like that impact aspect that may be missing from their professional lives. So the other piece, and I haven't fully had a chance to do this yet, but board service has definitely informed how I've started to think about my own career. And I think, nonprofit organizations, their purpose is impact, right? Whether it's economic impact, social impact, it's impact. For-profit companies, their purpose, even if they have a nice marketing slogan. It's profit, right? I work at BlackRock, so Christiane, we know this. The purpose is profit, right? Even if you say it's something different, and it can be both, right? It can be both, but at the end of the day, the commercial benefit to the company will typically be what's prioritized. And so I think what's an important sort of learning to kind of focus on when you're doing board service is to really focus in and think about, how is this nonprofit organizing their operating model? How do they approach strategic planning and decision making? Like, what are the principles of their process that you can take back to your company to help inform your own company's growth strategy? And I think, you know, we're at a place where corporations are increasingly focused on sustainability. And that skill set of being able to merge profit with impact is going to become increasingly important. And so I think for anyone who's thinking about joining a board, along with all of the other benefits, you know, if you take the opportunity to actually think about, like, what are you learning about the organization's process and their operating model while you're there, that's something that can really sort of inform and set you apart as you begin to grow in your career, as we sort of see corporations and the business community at large really go through this transition that I think we're just at the beginning of.
Well, I, of course, as a nonprofit founder and executive director, love what you just said, because we talk a lot about how the corporate world can come into the nonprofit world and teach nonprofits how we can be more efficient and function better and blah, 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 because, you know, we're so incompetent, we do everything wrong. So it's nice for someone to say, actually, we are doing some things right that the corporate community might learn from. So I think that's lovely. So thank you for saying that.
I jump in really quick and just say, like, I think we've had some people mention, you know, where they worked, and I'm not sure what the audience is, but like, I loved working with like teachers, engineers, like all different types of backgrounds, professional backgrounds too. So like, doesn't it just have to, you don't have to be like a business person, right? Just like any type of job, I think definitely look towards board service as well.
We talk a lot about this when I'm doing full board matching. A lot of people come to us and say, you know, as I said, I was a theater major in college and now I'm a partner at Skadden, and I'd love to join a board where everyone's a writer, an actor, a producer, like people in the arts world. You see that a little less at the associate board level, where associate boards are so segregated in terms of like what kind of people are on them. But like often in the art space at the full board level, for those of you who are considering full boards, you can say, I'm surrounded by bankers and lawyers all day long. I really want to be on a board that's all social workers, or a board that's all musicians, or just something totally different than my day job. So that is definitely like a reason, like people want to get away from those people that they work with them all day long. Ari, what would you like to add to this?
Yeah, I think a lot of the good things have really already been said. So I kind of don't want to repeat, but I think, you know, the things that I really like and some of the learnings from being on a board, I think come in two buckets. The first being perspective, and the second probably being prioritization. So at least from the perspective point, as I mentioned, I sit on a board that works with kids with disabilities. So to have, I guess, the personal fulfillment and connection with the kids that are a part and the adults that are a part of that program is a really big plus. You know, we talk about like our daily heroes, and we take a look at people that, you know, have trouble brushing their teeth or brushing their hair and things like that. It kind of really puts into perspective the opportunities that you've been afforded to as a young individual, as a person in society in general. And I think, you know, I'd like to speak for all of us when I say we're all high performing individuals. We work hard every single day, you know, whether that's through emails, Excel, PowerPoint, I mean, you name it. And to be able to have that opportunity on a board to take all that determination and focus that we have on a daily basis and put that into something good is really, really powerful. And then I think from the prioritization point, you know, it just goes to show that being a part of a board, while it's not your maybe first priority, as your job is your first priority, it is still a top priority in your life, and carving out that additional time helps you think about what's really important day to day. And, you know, obviously it's great to get out of work early and go to a happy hour, but if you carve out that 30 to 45 minutes to do something for your board ahead of time, or ahead of, you know, your happy hour or whatever it is, that not only makes an impact on the board that you serve on, but it makes an impact in your life. And I really think, you know, the more you give, it comes back tenfold. So I think that's really the biggest thing for me.
All right, that's lovely, and you raised an extremely good point that I always like to share with people, that board service, whether it's at the associate board level or the full board level, is very project based, and you can be a phenomenal associate board level and be just a board member and be super busy for that organization 2 weeks out of the year, and the other 50 weeks out of the year you're just really busy and you're not there. And it would be great if you could be involved all the time, but that's okay, because it's the sum total of what you do over the course of the year. And you just need to be very upfront, you know, in your matching process with the board you're talking to about, like, you know, I'm an accountant, and during tax season, I'm going to disappear for 3 months. But then, you know, when it's not tax season, I'll have lots of time for you. Because it doesn't take that much time to really be an impactful associate board member. You know, it's project based and you can give the time when you have it. And speaking of time, we are almost out of time. So I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for giving us 90 minutes in what I know is just the beginning of your very long day. You're all very busy New Yorkers. Most of you sit on several boards. You're doing so much to be impactful. And I know that you really inspired everybody who was watching with us tonight. I mean, how could you not be inspired by, like, the stories you all told and what you're accomplishing? And, you know, we in the nonprofit community are so grateful that you do make the time to do everything that you do. For those of you who had to leave, came in late, had to leave early, whatever it was, if you had to leave early, you're probably not on anymore. We're recording tonight. In 48 hours, we'll have this up on YouTube, and you'll get to hear what everybody had to say. And you know, I could sit here talking to you guys for 6 more hours. I feel like we just got started. You had so much great advice for everyone. But I promised you I'd keep it at 90 minutes, so I'm going to be good to my word. So thank you all so very much, and stay safe, everyone. And thank you for everything that you're doing and for inspiring everybody who's in our audience tonight. So have a good night, everybody. Take care.